This video is going to talk about finding simple interest. In order to understand simple interest, we have to understand a few vocabulary terms. The first one, principal, is the amount of the loan, the amount you're borrowing from the lender. So if it's a $5,000 loan, $5,000 is the principal. Interest, on the other hand, is the cost to borrow the principal. So how much is the bank charging you for you to use their money? And then maturity value is the principal plus the interest, and that is how much you end up paying back to the bank when the loan is finished. And so you can see in this equation at the bottom, maturity value is equal to principal plus interest. Calculating simple interest uses a pretty simple formula. All you need to do is figure out the principal times by the rate of the loan times by how long the loan is for. Now, simple interest loans are usually for a period less than a year, so a period of months. So when we talk about the time is expressed in years, but it's usually a fraction of a year. So it might be 6 out of 12 months or 5 out of 12 months that you can see down here at the bottom. The rate is just the rate that they give you for the loan. So it might be a 5% interest rate or a 10% interest rate. Some loans give specific dates, so they don't tell you that it's a 90-day loan, but they say that you have until May 24th to pay off this loan, and then you might have to figure out what exactly that loan span is. And so that can be done in two ways. It could be exact interest, where the time is divided by 365, although that's not as common as ordinary interest, where its time is the exact number of days divided by 360. What that does, usually for the lender, the bank, it gives them more money in return than dividing it by exact interest. So for the first example, we have Gary borrowed $15,000. The loan was for 6 months at a rate of 8%. What is the interest and maturity value? So what we want to do is we want to set up our equation as principal times rate times time is equal to interest. And so our principal is the face value of the loan, which is $15,000, times the rate, which is 0.08 as a decimal, times time, which here it's 6 months. So that's going to be 6 out of 12, or we could also write that as 1/2 or 0.5. When we multiply those all out together, and be careful that you multiply or that you when you type this in, that if you use parentheses, it might be important there. But when we multiply this all out, we get $600. Now, $600 is not what they have to pay back. They obviously have to pay back the $15,000 plus the $600, which is interest. So this is your interest. The maturity value would be both of those numbers together, the principal plus the interest, or $15,600. Now in this example, it says Ray borrowed $20,000 at 9%, but it doesn't give you how long. It tells you two dates. It says he borrowed the money on April 7th and he had until July 12th to pay it off. What is the interest and maturity value if calculated using ordinary interest? And that ordinary interest is important in this situation. So we first want to, again, find the interest. So interest equals principal times rate times time. The principal is $20,000 times the rate, which is 9%, 0.09 is a decimal, and time, which in this case we have to figure out how long this is for. Well, April 7th is day 97 out of the year, if we look at our calendar. And July 12th, this is April 7th, and July 12th is day 193. So if we subtract the first date, April 7th, from July 12th, we'll find out how long this loan is for, which comes out to be 96. So we have a 96-day loan, which if we put this over our fraction here, out of 360, because again we're using ordinary interest, and then multiply all of that together, we end up with $480. Now again, that's the interest. So for maturity value, we have to add the interest plus the principal, which would be $20,480. And that would be what the borrower has to pay back to the bank. Now sometimes we can manipulate the equation for simple interest to find unknown values. So if we know interest and we know principal and we know rate, we can find how long the loan is for. Or if we know rate and time in simple interest, we can find principal. Now if we manipulate the equation, principal ends up equaling interest divided by rate times time. So if we put these numbers in, we'd have $25.50, because it says Jerry paid the bank $25.50 in interest. So $25.50 divided by the rate 0.05 times the number of days, which would be 60 out of 360. Now you might notice that I used ordinary interest there. Unless it says exact, use ordinary. Now when we type this into our calculator, just be careful that you do 25.50 and then division, then parentheses around the 0.05 times 60 over 360. Otherwise it won't work out well. And actually I'd probably put parentheses here and here around that so that you get an exact number. When we do that, that comes out to be $3,060, which is how much they took the loan out for, or the principal. Now similar to finding principal, you can find rate. If we manipulate that original equation around to find rate, we get interest divided by the principal times time. Now it says you borrowed $16,000, the time of the loan is 180 days, and the amount of interest you pay is $540. What is the interest rate? So, again, my interest is $540 divided by principal, which was $16,000, times time, which in this case is 180 days out of 360, again using ordinary interest, and that's really 0.5. That's 180 divided by 360 is 0.5. But when we divide it all out, or multiply it all out, we end up with 0.0675. And if we move our decimal point over, that comes out to be 6.75%, which is our interest rate. Okay, and similarly, finding time is the interest divided by the principal times the rate. The only difference here is that we have to remember that the number we're going to get is in years. And if the question is asking for days, we're going to have to do one more calculation, which is to multiply by the number of days, or what it is to get that time in years to time in days. So just plugging in some numbers here, $4,500 borrowed at a rate of 7.5% ordinary interest. Now the ordinary interest is important because that, remember, is going to be our 360 days instead of 365. The amount of interest paid was $550. What was the time in days of the loan? So interest is $550 divided by the principal, $4,500, times the rate, which is 0.075. And if I do those calculations, I come out to get 0.16396, blah 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 blah, on and on and on, which is not necessarily what I want. But as long as that number's in my calculator, I'm going to multiply that by the 360 days, and I end up with another number I don't necessarily want the decimal to, but it's 586.6 repeating. Now we can't have 0.6 of a day. They're not going to be that accurate, but they will round up and say that this is 587 days is the length of the loan. Oops, not money, days. And there you go. That's finding time.